Sauron needs only this ring to cover all the lands in darkness.
What must I do?
A young hobbit embarks on a journey through a magical but dangerous world in The Lord of the Rings, one of 6 holiday movies we'll review this week. I'm Roger Ebert.
And I'm Richard Roeper. The Fellowship of the Ring, the first installment of the J.R.R. Tolkien trilogy, is an epic in every sense. A marvelous-looking movie with jaw-dropping sets and impressive special effects. But it repeats itself too often and drones on for nearly 3 hours. The brooding Elijah Wood of The Ice Storm and the husky Sean Astin from Rudy are curious choices to play Frodo and Samwise, who must destroy the ring that is the source of all evil in a land called Middle-earth.
It's some form of Elvish. I can't read it.
There are few who can. The language is that of Mordor, which I will not utter here.
That's Ian McKellen as Gandalf the Grey, the good-hearted wizard who guides Frodo through his perilous quest. Viggo Mortensen is Aragorn, a.k.a. Strider.
Are you frightened?
Yes.
Not nearly frightened enough. I know what haunts you.
Frodo and his band of hobbits are relentlessly pursued by the dark ring wraiths. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings books have enchanted tens of millions of readers, but as a movie, The Fellowship of the Ring gets bogged down under the weight of all those mystical speeches and self-consciously quirky characters. You've got 9 members of the Fellowship, dueling wizards, you've got an elf princess played by Liv Tyler, an elf queen played by Cate Blanchett, just too many characters for me to care about. On and on it goes, only to reach an abrupt non-ending straight out of a Saturday afternoon serial.
So you're giving it a thumbs down?
I'm giving it thumbs down.
Whoa. Well, I like it. I think that it indicates a return by Hollywood to the kind of courage that led to great epics like Lawrence of Arabia and the Star Wars trilogy. A really out there kind of large-scale, ambitious undertaking that is too long. I agree with you. It's too long, except for the people who are going to go see it. And they won't find it to be too long. Oddly enough,
well, you know what? Frodo the Hobbit ain't Lawrence of Arabia, first of all, okay?
The people who have your objections to this film are not the kinds of people that will ever go to see it in the first place.
The characters are getting tedious after a while. They go on one adventure after another. And this Frodo the Hobbit character who's in this little, elfin world or whatever, and he goes from one place to another, and he's wide-eyed, and he's wide-eyed. You'd think after the 15th beast or the 14th elf or the little sprite that he wouldn't be so amazed by Middle-earth. It's obviously this magical land, and they're all going after this silly little ring that makes people go, ooh, evil stuff.
I would not be completely honest if I didn't say that I can understand where you're coming from. On the other hand, if you're going to start talking about The Lord of the Rings on the grounds that they're going after this silly little ring, then I think you're kind of missing the whole point of the book. And the ring is what sets the entire plot into motion.
That's right.
That's right. I thought it was a visually powerful epic, and I enjoyed it. But I got to say my enjoyment was tempered by a little sadness that the innocence or naivete of the original books has kind of been lost in the middle of a high-tech special effects adventure picture. One thing that bothers me is that the hobbits are the heroes of the books, but in the movie, the tall people, the men, the wizards, and the elves, take the initiative and give the orders.
Boromir, give the ring to Frodo.
So my thumb is up for The Lord of the Rings. It's an impressive achievement, but I am a little melancholy that the movie is a violent action picture, and the books by Tolkien come from a kinder and gentler time. But Richard, at a time when Hollywood has such small visions, the purity, the ambition, the scope, the vastness of this film, those guards protecting the way down that river passage.
I agree. All of that is impressive.
Well done.
Hey, they spent a ton of money on this movie, and you can see the money on the screen. Yeah. It looks great, and the little people don't look like they're superimposed against the regular-sized people, and the giants look like giants, and all that good stuff. But, Roger, it goes on forever.
Okay, well, and
I understand that movies, Harry Potter is part of a series, but it ends on a satisfactory note.
Okay.
This thing, it's like after 3 hours, and they kind of look at each other, and they almost look at the viewers and go, see you next Christmas for another big commercial movie.
Well, of course, because it's a trilogy. It is a trilogy, so it doesn't end after the first book.
It's going to be a $27 trilogy for people, though. I think for $9 you should get some kind of closure.
I do feel for myself that Harry Potter is a better movie.
Absolutely.
Again, I do know that there are some people who are not true believers who are going to say what you said about Fellowship of the Ring. But I believe in the quest.
All right, fine.
Okay, our next movie is The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and with this second installment, the trilogy makes a decisive break with the gentle fable of J.R.R. Tolkien and declares itself an action picture. The hobbits are sidelined or held captive, while Aragorn, played by Viggo Mortensen, steps up as the dominant character. It'll be up to him and his friends Legolas the elf and Gimli the dwarf to lead the forces of Middle-earth into battle against the arch-enemy Saruman. He warns his ally, King Theoden.
It is an army bred for a single purpose: to destroy the world of men. They will be here by nightfall.
Meanwhile, the hobbits Frodo and Sam wander in circles and are basically onlookers while their friends Pippin and Merry are about to discover the secret of Treebeard and the other ancient talking trees.
You remember the old forest on the borders of Buckland? Folk used to say there was something in the water that made the trees grow tall and come alive.
As before, the movie is a great visionary spectacle with special effects and computer skills creating a convincing, exciting, and even beautiful world.
There will be no dawn for men.
It's the ring. Frodo! It's taken hold of you.
You have the gift of foresight. Tell me what you have seen.
He is not coming back.
And in the second film, we get to know Gollum, a pathetic and craven little creature that was warped by long possession of the ring. As for the rest of the film, I have a feeling I'm going to be kind of alone in regretting the decision to go for big-scale action instead of trying at least to preserve some of the whimsy of the classic books. The film is certainly a technical masterpiece with a closing battle of amazing visual splendor, and Viggo Mortensen emerges here as a swashbuckling hero with real screen presence. So I like the movie, but I think they kind of misplaced Tolkien somewhere along the way.
Well, although I appreciated the epic visuals of the first Lord of the Rings, I was underwhelmed by the pacing and overwhelmed by the sheer number of characters. But I have to admit that the very thorough nature of that setup made it easy for me to rejoin the story in part 2 and get really involved in the fates of the main characters. My favorite plot thread involves Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, who are kind of like a mismatched Three Musketeers.
Come on, Gimli!
3 days a night's pursuit. No food, no rest.
And Sir Ian McKellen is back as the immortal Gandalf, but he's become a more ethereal being. Gandalf the Grey is now Gandalf the White.
Ill news, ill guessed.
Be silent. Keep your forward tongue behind your teeth. I have not passed so far in death to bandy crooked words with a witless worm.
There's even time for new romance in The Two Towers, as the elf Arwen, played by Liv Tyler, comes to realize that her love with the human Aragorn might never flourish. He is drawn to the feisty Eowyn.
The women of this country learned long ago. Those without swords can still die upon them. I fear neither death nor pain.
What do you fear, my lady?
But even with the sprinkles of romance and light humor, The Two Towers does have an overall tone that's darker and more violent than the first leg of the trilogy. The action sequences are on a par with such historic spectacles as Ben-Hur and Gladiator, and the special effects are vastly superior to those two films. This film doesn't change my review of the original, but it does have me eagerly looking forward to the final installment. I liked it a lot.
So you're finally thumbs up for
Absolutely.
LOTR. Okay.
Absolutely.
You know, I looked at the first film the night before going to see this one.
I did too.
Yeah. And I'm beginning to realize that what we're dealing with here is a considerable epic in movie history, and it really does work in the long scale. I'm looking forward to the third part too. What I want to know is, would it have been possible to be true to the spirit of Tolkien and still make movies of this cost and length and spectacle, or was it necessary to really tilt toward violence and action in order to get the audience?
Well, there are lots of people out there who know more about Tolkien than I do, but I do believe that it is true to the spirit. The characters are true to the first film, and yes, it's darker, it's more violent. This is one of the more violent PG-13 movies I've ever seen. I think they're this close to getting an R rating, which they were never going to do in a huge, huge epic like this.
Well, you know, the last great battle scene, which lasts at least half an hour, and which was great on the screen, and I loved looking at it, really blows up a very small part of the book, and meanwhile the hobbits are put on the shelf altogether.
I understand what you're saying. I think probably in the final chapter we'll see more of the friendship, and you know, the characters in this movie, they're all apart. There are 3 different storylines going on here, and you know, we'll see them come together. And when you get the DVD, you get even more material.
6,000 spears. Less than half of what I'd hoped for.
6,000 will not be enough to break the lines of Mordor.
It's the third and best chapter of one of the great adventure sagas in movie history, and we've got the early review. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, is Peter Jackson's crowning achievement. As you'd imagine, The Return of the King is the most emotionally involving and dramatically satisfying leg of the trilogy, with resolutions coming one after another after another. But it all begins with two brave hobbits and that sneaky tour guide.
He means to murder us! Never! Sneak wouldn't hurt a fly! Ah! He's a horrid, fat hobbit who hates speaking and who makes up nasty lies.
Elijah Wood's Frodo is so bruised and battered as he tries to deliver the One Ring to its rightful destiny that it's Sean Astin's Sam who repeatedly must step in to save the day. Meanwhile, the Fellowship's journey takes them to Gondor's capital city for the battle to end all battles.
Is there any hope, Gandalf, for Frodo and Sam?
There never was much hope. Just a fool's hope.
Hugo Weaving from the Matrix movies is Elrond. Liv Tyler is his daughter Erwin, who's still in love with Aragorn, played by Viggo Mortensen.
Some things are certain. If I leave him now, I will regret it forever.
As someone who is not the world's biggest Tolkien fan, I had to get about halfway through the second of these movies before I could sort through the endless parade of characters and their challenges. But in Return of the King, I knew them well and I liked them a lot. I relished every hard-fought victory. I felt the sting of each crushing loss. After 2 years of pre-production, 274 days of principal photography, and 3 years of post-production, Jackson and his cast and crew deserve a thunderclap of applause.
As with the other two installments, Return of the King centers on spectacular special effects sequences, of which the best involves, for me at least, not thousands of men and orcs and a giant city in the throes of battle, but simply Frodo going one-on-one with a spider as big as a Buick. There's more character development than usual in the story of Denethor, played by John Noble, whose heart is broken with the death of Boromir, his favorite son. Pippin offers his own life in sympathy.
Boromir died to save us, my kinsman and me. He fell defending us from many foes.
Pippin.
I offer you my service, such as it is, in payment of this debt.
The dominant character in Part 3 is Gandalf, played by Ian McKellen, who is more all-knowing and authoritative than ever before. If I have a problem with Gandalf in this movie, it's with his extraordinary physical agility. He looks like a very old man with that beard down to his waist, and yet he rides for days, leads troops into battle, and in one special effects long shot is outrunning all of the younger warriors in a headlong charge. Moments like that tend to undermine the credibility of the character, but then I guess realism is not exactly the strong point of this series. And you know, the nice thing about this film is the series did not run out of gas. In a way, I think it kind of goes like this: Part 2 and then Part 3 back up here again. And now, having seen the whole sweep of the three films, I admire it more as a whole than I did any of the parts. And the one thing that I really liked about Part 3 is that the hobbits are back in the thick of the action. I felt in Part 2 they were always kind of on hold. They were off somewhere doing something else, and here the hobbits get their due.
Well, I think you're so right. This is really, it's going to end up being a 10-hour movie if you include the scenes that are added for the inevitable DVD special quadruple anniversary editions. Maybe it'll be 12 hours altogether. and I agree with you. I appreciate the first two films a lot more. And you're so right about the characters. I mean, it's almost more interesting to see this sort of Greek tragedy kind of stuff that's going on, because the one thing I don't think you have here is a villain to match up with all these great warriors and hobbits and everything. It's just sort of this dark lord and then this sense of evil, because you have all these creatures. I will say also, though, that is the best giant spider in movie history.
That spider,
that is a believable giant spider. I mean, the special effects are pretty amazing.
That's some spider. I also love the big kind of elephant creatures who are brought down. You know, all in all, as you think back over what Peter Jackson has done here in these three films, it is really a landmark. And, you know, I kind of was like you, I kind of got into this kind of slowly, and it took me a while to get the idea and to so forth. And now, looking at it, as I say, looking at it as an achievement, I have a lot of admiration.
It's impressive stuff.